Good afternoon, and welcome everyone. I'm Sue Ann Whitman, and I am the mayor of the Hanover Borough. It is fantastic to see you all here today and to see your interest in learning about the Blue Zones project. Some of you may already know about the Blue Zones and be familiar with them, or perhaps you may know it from one of the books, or possibly from the documentary on Netflix, or the National Geographic issue that was solely dedicated to the Blue Zones. Some of you may have never heard the Blue Zones. Either way, I'm excited for you to learn about the Blue Zones project and how it can significantly impact Hanover and all of York County in a multitude of beneficial ways economically and in health. In 2016, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. While undergoing all the fun of chemo, surgeries, and radiation, I began researching healthy living. This is how I came upon the Blue Zones and their principles of healthy living. I have incorporated these into my own life, and by default, my family has too. So I have to tell a story on my husband that I was so proud about, that I felt like, oh my gosh, he actually did listen. So he went and watched a football game with his son over at Buffalo Wild Wings, where he would normally order the mango habanero wings. But instead, when he came home, he was so excited, he told me he actually had ordered the black bean burger, and he actually liked it. And he said, I'm gonna have to take you back there so you can try it. So I thought, wow, finally I'm actually making an impact in my own family. And then I like to joke the cat too, because my cat's 19 years old. And he's very healthy. So anyway, I'm so excited to be here, and I appreciate that you all came out here today and are giving us some of your time to learn more about the Blue Zones and the Blue Zones project. Because for me, the Blue Zones is about not only adding years to your life, but adding life to your years. And with that, I would like to introduce Matthew Jackson, who has been the keystone really of this project. Through him, there's several, as you'll see on the steering committee, he was kind of the pivotal person in the middle that knew, like for example, Bill. I never knew Bill before, so he knew Bill, he knew Janelle. Janelle knew David, who's going to be presenting. So he was one that connected all of us together, and we've been working very hard for the last 2 months to bring this all together. And just a little teaser, we have a very, very special guest up from Florida at the very end. So with that, Matt, you're up.
Where's Chuck?
Oh, way in the back.
Chuck, we're so proud of you. We knew you could do it.
She makes it easy.
Son, we're so proud of you. Welcome. Thank you, Mayor Whitman, who's the manifestation of Blue Zones, a living, breathing example for all of us. Thank you all for being here. Do you love your friends? Do you love your family? Do you love yourself? Do you, do you at least tolerate Hanover and our York County? Can somebody say yes? When you love somebody and that body is suffering, struggling, going downhill, getting bad grades, showing the warning signs, getting the diagnosis that sinks your heart, furrows your brow, and keeps you tossing and turning at night. If you really, really, really love that person, you will do whatever it takes to get between the one you love and the forces and choices holding the beloved back. with every muscle and fiber in you, all your marrow and all your power. You'll do whatever it takes to do right by them, to give them a fighting chance to be their best, to get them back to snuff, and to see them walking in the sun again. Sadly, in York County, some chronic conditions are beating us down, holding us back, and degrading lives. Stalking the well-being and the lives of neighbors, friends, and family, and ourselves. Here's the current sobering snapshot diagnosis of York County compared to the rest of Pennsylvania. Cerebrovascular diseases, stroke, brain bleeds, vascular dementia are all higher and more prevalent here than in all of the rest of Pennsylvania. So is childhood poverty. So is diabetes. So are lung and bronchus cancers. So is melanoma of the skin. So are preterm birth rates. York County also has a higher teenage pregnancy rate. We also know that 64% of York Countyans are obese or overweight. And we suffer from zip code injustices. This from WellSpan Health. The average lifespan of folks who live in York City's 17401 zip code is 10 years less than that of Dallastown, 5 miles away. Hold that for a second. 10 years less, 5 miles in our county. The average life expectancy of a human being who lives in York City's 17401 zip code is 6 years less than the rest of Pennsylvania. We also suffer from a severe lack of access to mental health care, mental health services, and we exhibit mental health disparities. Depression, loneliness, and trauma are prevalent, silent killers. Simply put, we are in a mental health crisis, and we know we have not recovered from COVID. So that's just a partial list of the unwelcome news. The sources, Pennsylvania Department of Health, and the Community Needs Health Assessment, the most recent one by WellSpan Health. The cold hard facts are irrefutable. But the good news is that hope and strength abound all around us, my friends. The good news is that when we connect with that energy, tap into it, engage with the better angels of our nature, the greater ambition of kindness and compassion and health equity can work magic. The good news is that we, York Countyans, have basic human decency. We have humaneness for all our friends and neighbors, even ones we have not met yet. The good news is that tried and true best practices exist. The good news is that the world's 5 original Blue Zone communities and dozens of Blue Zones projects throughout the nation give us dynamic possibilities and roadmaps. The good news is that York County has Blue Zones approach disciples and ambassadors like the Blue Zones manifesting Mayor Sue Ann Whitman and social worker and psychotherapist Janelle Mancuso. The good news is that York County has a nimble, mission-driven, creatively collaborative steering team with awesome advisors that is conducting due diligence. Its members are among you today. Team, please rise as I call your names. Mayor Whitman, Janelle Mancuso, the Senior Director of Community Health, Michelle Mummert, the President CEO of Family First Health, Jenny Englerth, from the York County Community Foundation, the amazing Executive Director of Embracing Aging and founder of Trove Street, Kathy Bollinger, the indomitable man who cycled from coast to coast to raise funds for clients in need at Bell Socialization Service. Brother from another mother, Bill Swartz. And by the way, Bill's bicycle is on loan, temporary loan, to Guthrie Memorial Library. You can get your picture taken next to it in the back. But you better get your picture taken today because the Smithsonian Institute has dibs on it. That's cause for applause. Thank you. And the good news is, Hanover also has an awesome Trail Towns action team coordinated by the York County Economic Alliance. Jeff, Scott, folks on that action team, Justine, please rise. Silas, please rise. I want to recognize you. We're all in this together. Thank you. The good news is that in our presence is David Longfield-Smith, former senior director of Blue Zone Southwest Florida, and we will claim him now as a York County native. Usually it takes 20 years. We love you so much. Your passport's there.
So thank everyone for being here. Thank you very much. I have to clarify as well, I'm here as a volunteer. I'm what they call a Blue Zones Project ambassador. I'm not actually employed by the company. I retired in 2021. Daytime TV is terrible. There's not a lot to do. We got our house fixed up. We left Florida because you get to a certain age and you're viewing retirement, and it's natural. You leave a warm place with no snow and you move to some place colder. No, seriously, it does make sense. It's kind of like what you do when you bought too much chicken or salmon and you look in the fridge. What do you do with it? You freeze it. So yeah, we like the cooler weather. We genuinely do. We also followed the kids and grandkids up here. Family is incredibly important. And this part of the country is just gorgeous. My wife's from England originally. There are so many connections here. It's fantastic. You all talk funny, but it is a magical place. So we love being here. And a couple of months ago, I got this odd text message and asking, we're kind of interested in bringing Blue Zones Project to the county, et cetera. I thought it was a crank call, but it was legit, and it set us off on this journey. And it's amazing. So I'm out of retirement now, volunteering, working with this incredible team. And for me, it's an incredible gift because it's introducing me to so many other people in the community. It could not be better. My wife also likes it because it keeps me out of the house a little bit more. So Matthew hit some of the statistics, the local ones. These are what we often would show in the project. 73% of Americans are overweight or obese. We know there are some health issues that come along with that. Over 37 million Americans have diabetes. That costs us almost $413 billion. That's a significant hit. 1 out of 20 Americans will have cardiovascular disease. Colorectal cancer is on the increase amongst younger people. My son-in-law actually had colon cancer, had the surgery 5 years ago in his mid-30s. Kind of shocking for the family. And 1 out of 8 women in the US will develop breast cancer. These are some significant things that are happening, and I know we have many healthcare professionals in the room. You understand there is a need, and there are some challenges we have in the community. We're also becoming lonelier, and I like this one because if you look at the slide there, we used to have 3 really good close friends. Now we're down to 1.5. I am a half friend to somebody out there, and I've lost their number. I would like to know who it is. But you think about that, and you folks I know are connected. How many people have a smartphone in their pocket, right? You're well connected, but how many of those contacts in your smartphone would you be calling if those black Suburbans were pulled up to the front of the house and helicopters were overhead, or the ambulance was coming up, the white coats were coming out? Some things are a little more private, right? And that's kind of the tough thing. We're very well connected, but very close friends are actually more remote. So it's kind of difficult. And loneliness is actually equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So even if you quit smoking and you're lonely, not so good. So let me ask you all a question. This is group participation here. Give me a number for genetics. If you were to put a number up there, we're talking about how long and how well you're going to live. And we've got two clumps, genetics or lifestyle and environment. Give me a number for genetics. Who's the first one? This is like an auction. 50. 30, 10. I got 15, 20, 40. So far, 50's got it. Anybody beat 50? In actual fact, 20% is genetics. So I can blame, I think it's a gentleman on my mother's side of the family for this. But everything from here down, I own. That's me. That's how I'm living my life. And we know this from the Danish twin studies. Identical twins were tracked for many, many years. Same DNA, identical twins, but the ones that were living in a healthier lifestyle, a healthier environment, had far better health themselves, and they lived longer lives. So again, we can't blame our parents for everything. A lot of this, how well we live and how long we live, is us. It's our lifestyle and environment. So the Blue Zones project story begins with Blue Zones. This goes back to 2004 when this gentleman here, National Geographic Fellow and best-selling author, Dan Buettner, he's done a lot of different stories with National Geographic. He actually has 3 world records for cycling. Bill Swartz is very keen to meet Dan and have a competition. Dan actually rode a bike from Alaska to the bottom of South America. Did that. It was a nice ride. He says it's pretty easy though. If you look on the map, it's all downhill. He did another ride. This was a pretty cool one. He rode from Minneapolis to St. Paul. He lives in Minneapolis, and he rode his bike from Minneapolis to St. Paul by way of Siberia. So Dan did some amazing things, but one day National Geographic came to him and said, hey, listen, we've actually got some folks out there looking at these long living cultures. Would you like to be involved with this? He's on a plane and off he goes. So this started in 2004. And they found what they called the first blue zone. Does anybody know why they called it a blue zone? That was the color of the pin that they happened to have when they used the map. Could have been a purple zone. You would have been really dressed sharp for that today. Could have been a green zone. You don't know, but it was a blue zone. So the first one's the Neuro province of Sardinia. This is an area not actually too dissimilar from York County when you think of the geographic terrain. There's a lot of hills, etc. And the interesting thing in this place, they found that people maintain their social equity well into their senior years. In the United States, we kind of peak about 30 or 40. Brad Pitt, maybe George Clooney, they're doing okay. But most of us around 40, social equity is done. Well, here in Sardinia, these folks are very involved in their communities, their families, their businesses, their churches, well into their 80s, into their 90s, even into their hundreds. This is actually a place where they keep very active. They're not driving SUVs. They're very involved, farms, etc. They have shepherds. They have 1 out of every 250 people in Sardinia in this area is going to live to the age of 100. In the United States, our average is 1 out of 6,000. So if you've ever fancied going someplace kind of cool to hang out, Sardinia I would recommend. And if you're a lady, this is also home to the highest concentration of male centenarians in the planet. So forget the fella down the street. You want somebody that's a good investment, that's definitely here in Sardinia. But I mentioned this, yes? Social equity?
What does that?
Oh, it just kind of like your strength, your cash value, if you will. And in other words, like how well you might carry the room, or if people value the opinion, et cetera. And it's a general term. I'm saying it kind of jokingly, tongue in cheek. But we often find in the United States, folks hit a retirement age and they think, oh, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to play pickleball, I'm going to play pop tennis, I'm going to do all the fun things. And there's nothing against that, that's fine. At the same time, maintaining a connection to the community, think about all that wisdom that these folks have. I go back to the slide here of the group. These folks, you have no idea the life experiences they've had. So that investment, all that knowledge that they're carrying, how that can benefit their communities, the businesses, the families. In Sardinia, they found kids were growing up not just with mom and dad, not just with the grandparents, but with great-grandparents as well. What's that saying? It takes a village to raise a child. Well, there's a whole village and one family for that child. So again, the highest concentration of male centenarians. You're welcome. The second blue zone they found in the East China Sea, little island Okinawa off the coast of Japan. It's part of Japan. Okinawa is kind of interesting. What do you think they eat the most of? I'm showing this slide. What would you guess? Anybody here do any Japanese takeaway? Seaweed, you see, yeah. What else do we think of a Japanese diet? Rice, yeah. Seafood. And well, in actual fact, these folks, the centenarians that they found in Okinawa, eat predominantly a plant-based diet. About 90% of what they ate was something that they're growing in their own gardens very commonly. Maybe about 1% meat, 1% fish, 1% dairy or eggs. Very little comes from animal. In actual fact, the highest concentration of calories in their diet came from a purple or orange sweet potato. They ate a lot of vegetables. Now, sadly, that's changing a little bit in Okinawa. There's many more Western influences, fast food restaurants, etc. But the centenarians that we're talking about, that's what they ate. They have the world's longest disability-free life expectancy, live 7 years longer than Americans, 5 times as many centenarians. And these last two, I think, are quite significant. 1/5 the rate of breast and colon cancers, and 1/6 the rate of cardiovascular disease. 80% of us over the age of 65 is likely to die from one of those last 3 things: breast or colon cancer or cardiovascular disease. That's our national statistic. So these folks in Okinawa doing something right, fantastic. And they've also learned how to combat that other thing, loneliness. This is a picture of a moai. A moai, M-O-A-I is the term we learned. It's essentially a group coming together for a common purpose. This moai is a group that's been put together by their mothers when they were small children. They brought them together and they would meet regularly. This moai has been meeting for 97 years. So if you're a Rotarian or a Kiwanis, you got a lot to catch up here. 97 years, right? The average age in this room is 101. Think about this, how it's a support. It's like a personal board of directors. It's somebody that has your back. It's somebody to give you the feedback, good days or bad days. They don't have smartphones out in this meeting. They're talking to one another directly. This is Kamada Nakazato. Dan met her, and she's holding her great-great-granddaughter. There's 101 years difference in age between these two women. And Dan asked her, how does it feel? She said, it's like leaping into heaven. I think it's kind of a nice thing. Now, I have a great-granddaughter. Our daughter married a fellow a little bit older, had 2 children from his first marriage. So I'm a great-grandfather now. It makes my back hurt just saying that, kind of, you know. But at the same time, I really want to live a very long, healthy life because, man, if I'm supposed to show up at that wedding, do the math. I'm going to be an older guy, right? So it's so important. But again, that family connection, the youth, magical. The third blue zone, and the only one naturally occurring in the United States, was found in a little place called Loma Linda, California. Now, you folks in Pennsylvania might think a different way about California. You might think, oh, they're all different out there. Loma Linda is very different. This is a community of about 8 square miles, 25,000 people. 9,000 or so of them are Seventh-day Adventist. It's the highest concentration of Seventh-day Adventists in the United States. These folks are kind of special because their religion encourages them predominantly plant-based diet. They don't smoke. They don't drink alcohol. You're starting to wonder, what do they do for fun, right? Well, for them, connecting with other people, family, enjoying the outdoors. The Sabbath is sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. They downshift. They spend time getting together with one another. They know how to connect. They know what's really important. And they take very, very good care of their health. It's kind of a special place. And the Seventh-day Adventists, as a group, have been studied over 32 years now by the National Institutes of Health. 101,000 Seventh-day Adventists have been tracked, measuring their health outcomes. As a population in the United States, they are by far the healthiest Americans, live on average 10 years longer than the rest of us. Again, it's lifestyle and environment. That's the key to their success. This here is Blue Zone's royalty. This lady is Marge Jetton, Jetton, Marge Jetton. In the picture here, she's 103. Marge gets up at 4:30 in the morning, spends a half hour reading the Bible, and then she goes downstairs, pumps some iron, works on their stationary bike. Oh, and her breakfast, very, very prescriptive about this, steel-cut oatmeal with nuts and soy milk, and she washes it down with what she calls a prune juice shooter. There you go. And it sounds funny, but she's 103. How many of you are thinking about stopping at Giant or Weiss on the way home and getting steel-cut oatmeal, nuts, and some prune juice, right? And again, soy milk, not regular milk, kind of different. But Marge, very active. She has a lot to do. She gets dressed and she volunteers for 7 different organizations in Loma Linda. This is a 103-year-old person driving a 1994 Cadillac, going out to volunteer. Keep up with me here. And her favorite place to volunteer is the Loma Linda Old Folks Home. That's what she calls it. So here's a 103-year-old person helping maybe your grandmother or your grandfather get the contacts on the smartphone, address the envelope for the kids, whatever it may be. Marge lived to 106, bless her. Fantastic. This is also the culture that produced Ellsworth Wareham. Ellsworth Wareham here, 94 years old in the photograph. He wanted to have a fence put up around the property. They gave him a quote of $6,000. He said, well, for $6,000, I'll do it myself. So for 3 days, National Geographic photographers followed him around. He dug all the holes, he poured the concrete, he did all the work by himself. Perhaps predictably, the 4th day, he ended up in the hospital. But he's not the person here in open heart surgery. It's Dr. Ellsworth Wareham, right here. He practiced this month 20 open heart surgeries. If you Google him, you'll find in Wikipedia and many places, Dr. Ellsworth Wareham is actually responsible for taking open heart surgeries worldwide to more countries than probably anyone else on the planet. He lived to 103. So I think, again, fantastic culture. There were 2 other blue zones in the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica and Icaria, which is part of Greece, but it's just off the coast of Turkey. But those were the 5 blue zones. Those were the 5 original places that they found in the world where they could prove through the demographic research, all the strenuous study and checking, this is where people were truly living a longer, healthier life. Living a long life is great, but if the last 20 years you're connected to machines to keep you alive, right? Not so good. So you want a long life and a healthy life. Dan wrote about this. The National Geographic that first came out with the Blue Zone story is the #3 selling National Geographic in the history of their magazine. That goes back to, I think, 1884. The only 2 stories that resonated more with readers was the moon landing and the Kennedy assassination. So it gives you an idea. This really was popular because people are like, wait a minute, this could affect me. This could affect my life. So you could read all these things or pay very close attention to the next slide, and I'll give you all the secrets. It essentially boiled down to 9 common things they found throughout the 5 blue zones, and you have a handout that they gave you at the front door. Those are the 9 traits that people pretty much had in common in all these areas. First one, move naturally. You don't see a lot of gym memberships in Loma Linda. Yes, fair enough. Marge is going down to a gym in the community that she lives in. But most of the folks in the blue zones, physical activity is an unavoidable part of their day. Let me ask, how many of you walked to school when you were a child? Pretty much every hand. How many of you have children or grandchildren that walk to school now? 3, maybe 4. So it's a different, and that's just physical activity, right? But it is changing a little bit. So moving naturally, purpose, like I said, Ellsworth Wareham, volunteering, being the second surgeon, open heart surgeries, downshifting, relaxing. In the food, in the eat category, eat wisely, 80% rule. In Okinawa, they call it hara hachi bu. Everybody say that with me. Hara Hachi Bu. Rolls right off the tongue. And essentially it means eat until you're 80% full. And I'll tell you exactly when that is. Have you ever had a Thanksgiving dinner and it's just fantastic, and then you pause a second and you come up and you're trying to catch your breath and you're looking back down at the plate thinking, what can I attack next? That's the time to stop, because that's probably when your body is actually full. You just didn't realize it yet. So Hara Hachi Bu. The plant slant we already covered. They eat predominantly plant-based. Friends at 5, getting together with people at the end of the day to connect, to de-stress, to unwind. Sometimes it's been called wine at 5, but we've learned through research you really need to have that healthy relationship with alcohol. Friends at 5 is more universal, because it's not what you're drinking that's important. It's the time with the people. That's the key thing. The positive pack, same thing. Surround yourself with people that encourage the best possible you. If your 3 best friends smoke, drink too much, or jump off of tall buildings without parachutes, there's a 150% chance you're going to do likewise. There's that influence. So again, keep with the positive pack. Loved ones first, putting family and loved ones first. And the last one, belong. They found in the Blue Zones, belonging to a faith-based organization and attending. The belonging is not the key thing. The attending is the key thing. At least once a week can add 4 to 14 years to your life. That was 2 university studies that found that out. That was Duke and Harvard, by the way. So it's, again, that connecting, being with people. So the Surgeon General said, my dream is that we get as good at preventing disease as we are at treating it. Again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So back in 2009, AARP, the American Association of Retired People, and the United Health got together and they challenged Dan Buettner, can you make one? Can you take what you learned from the Blue Zones and help re-engineer a typical community in the United States? Well, Dan lives in Minneapolis, so they put the call out through the governor's office. They had about 24 communities in Minnesota hold up their hand, say, we'd like to do it. Albert Lea, Minnesota was chosen. This is a community of about 18,000 people, so it's a nice small size, pretty easy thing to work with. And this is the first time they did it. They had no idea how it was going to turn out. The results were fantastic. They achieved a 2.9, call it 3-year increase in lifespan, 35% drop in smoking over 6 years, 40% drop in city employees' health care costs. So even if you're not concerned about health, my goodness, money matters, right? Drop in the healthcare cost, and that affected everybody. And they went to 34th place in the health rankings in the state. Well, that was pretty exciting, but then that's only one. Then the question was, can you do it again? Maybe you just got lucky. There were 3 cities out in California, the beach cities, that said, we'd like to be the second test project, Hermosa, Redondo, and Manhattan Beach. And you see here the Surgeon General out with them. Again, same thing. Few years down the road, phenomenal results. 25% drop in overweight adults, 36% decrease in smoking, 10% risk reduction, which netted $42 million in savings for the community. And I love this one, childhood obesity down 68%. That was at the Redondo Beach schools. So again, this showed that yes, there's value in this. There's things that are working. How can we scale this? Well, that's really when Blue Zones Project was born in a large way. The company that I originally worked with, Healthways, came up with this formula. They call it the life radius. And the idea of this is to work with people, places, and policy. And this is the most important thing. It's not a me project, it's a we project. It's all of us making a difference in little ways that are measurable and sustainable. No one wants to be nagged. No one wants to feel bad that they're not eating right, they're not exercising right. We all know when we're making mistakes, and that's fine, mistakes are going to happen. But if our environment encourages healthier choices, if we can truly say we've made the healthy choice the easy choice, I could still have that double cheeseburger, but if there's that black bean burger there, I bet you more often than not, I might try something different. Naples, Florida, we got Shula Steakhouse to do a $19 cauliflower steak. It's cauliflower. It's $19, but it worked incredibly well. So people, places, and policy, make little changes that can add up to a lot. Blue Zones Project comes in and works with the community. This is very detailed work, meeting with community leaders, organizations. There are so many organizations in this room now, healthcare organizations, not only the normal systems, but the community service not-for-profit, employers. You know, this is Snacktown USA. So we have Hanover Foods, we have Utz Chips, we have Snyder's, part of Campbell's Snacks. There's so many big companies in York. There's BAE Systems, Harley Davidson's. If I have that crisis and I really need a motorcycle, I know where to go. Well, all of those folks would be consulted during an assessment. You want to get input from the entire community. It's a we project. The assessment then creates blueprints, very specific plans with specific measures, and every part of the community has a checklist. They have tools to work with. So this gives you an idea. There's been a number of different healthcare systems involved with Blue Zones Project already, and it's exciting because you would obviously kind of think healthcare systems, well, there's a no-brainer, they're going to lead in health. But it's also a great benefit for them, because not only is it the good that's done for the community through their sponsorship and their support of the project, but it's also how it benefits them as employers. They have quite a few employees. If they can drop their own healthcare costs and have a healthier, happier workforce, et cetera. Businesses of all sizes, and you see some big names here. Costco Wholesale was actually out in Hawaii. The whole state of Hawaii is in a 10-year Blue Zones project. The whole state of Iowa did it. Again, I came from Southwest Florida, but you see quite a few names you recognize. I think of Lockheed Martin, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, Bell Helicopters. I love over there above Costco, Palmer Candy. That's Sioux City, Iowa. Palmer Candy was very active and involved in a community health and wellness initiative. Fantastic. They have employees. It's good for everybody. So impacting people, again, forming social networks, building the MOIs. We did purpose workshops, cooking classes, encouraging physical activity. This was our kickoff in Southwest Florida back in 2015. We had people indoors. We also had people outdoors. And that's kind of the key. Get everybody together, share the message. Walking groups formed. It's not the walking. It's the people being together that's important, forming relationships. We had walking groups on Marco Island. When Larry wouldn't show up for the group, they worried about Larry. They'd go over to find Larry was ill, Larry had a problem, whatever. Ended up painting Larry's house. You know, the group started connecting and doing all sorts of things way beyond the original design brief. Purpose workshops. These are huge. This is a 2-hour workshop. Blue Zones Project uses the work of Richard Leider. Anybody familiar with the name Richard Leider? If you Google him, he's kind of like the world's guru of purpose. He's written so many books. But having purpose adds so many years to your life. It's why you need to get up in the morning. If you don't have purpose, it's a lot less likely you are going to get up in the morning. It helps you have that rudder and that momentum. This is Kathy Feinstein, and she has a PhD. She's a licensed coach and counselor, but she was one of 6 volunteers that we had in Southwest Florida that did this 2-hour purpose workshop for free. We exceeded our goals very early in this. People loved it. And again, we had city employees. We'd go to employers and do this. Everybody was eligible. We encourage volunteerism and connecting in the community. The gentleman there in the polka dot or the check sweater, that's Mayor Bill Barnett in the city of Naples, one of our outdoor events, very active, again, like Mayor Whitman. It starts at the top, that leadership. The cooking classes were done, again, free of charge for people in the community, and not just adults, but also kids. First Watch, which is not here, you have to get over near King of Prussia to find it, but it is a chain. First Watch. They had one of their folks, Kelsey Davidson, came in and did a cooking class. They assembled a nice healthy dish for kids at the Y. This was fantastic, and the kids were trying things they'd never had before. And most of them washed their hands, and I tried some of it. It was good. Outdoor exercise, Nino Magadino, we met him early on in the project, again, volunteering his time, large groups of folks warming up, and then they did a huge walk. That's North Collier Regional Park in Naples. Places, schools, work sites, restaurants, grocery stores, walking school bus. I talked earlier, how many walk to school? Well, the way a walking school bus works, The bus stops about 3 blocks short of the school. Kids get off the bus and they walk that last 3 blocks. Tommy's got a chance to shake the ants out of his pants before he gets into the class. It's fantastic for the kids, and teachers love this. Schools that said, oh, we're not going to we're going to keep doing this, actually had a lot of pushback from teachers. No, you have to. This is really helping my day. So it was very good. Gardens at schools. And I love the tie-dye. You know, we all go back to an age, you know, why don't kids wear more tie-dye? It's really good. I was actually sitting, anybody here been to Naples, Florida before? Okay, a few hands. You're familiar with Mel's Diner on 41, downtown Naples? Costica Teresi is a good friend of mine, owns Mel's. He also owns the one in Golden Gate, and his brother has one in Bonita up in Cape Coral and Fort Myers. So 5 locations. And I was talking to Costica, trying to get him involved in the project. And Mel's is the bastion of comfort food. If you're Oprah Winfrey and you come to town, and you want to go someplace to eat where you're not going to be bothered, you go to Mel's. Steve Forbes, I've seen there. Judge Judy, I've seen there dozens of times. Football players, governor, you name it. Anybody who's anybody, Mel's is the place to go and be quiet. Well, I was flipping through the slides here, and I was getting to the restaurant portion, and Costica saw this picture, and he said, no, wait a minute, go back. So I went back, I'm like, why do you want to look at he said, that's my son. That's Freddie. Whoop, that's Freddie there with the tie-dye bandana. So I thought that was pretty cool. And of course, he signed up right there on the spot. He said, if it's good for Freddie, it's good for me. Employers participating. They put the Blue Zones project parking spot not nearest the building, furthest from the building. It's just a little incentive. Employees were fighting to park far away from the front door. And I share this because I used to drive over and look at Gulf Coast Town Center. They have a nice LA Fitness. You wouldn't believe how many people are fighting to get the space right by the front door so they can go in and work out. Now think about that. You could probably save the gym membership if you just walked around the mall, right? So that, and this is Artist Naples. They posted the number of steps to all the different parts on their campus, just little ways to encourage natural movement. Employers putting healthy snacks in their cafeteria, bike racks, and not even a bike rack, but also bikes for their employees to use on the campus. Again, encouraging physical activity. Standing desk, the lady on the left actually has a treadmill that she's on as well. So she chose it. The boss didn't say, you don't get a chair this week because you were late on the expense report. You know, she chose it. And she liked the idea of a treadmill. My daughter actually has one now. My son-in-law works for Costco, and she's got this really cool desk and a treadmill. I got socks. So, but it was on time. It was my birthday. I'm happy. So, in Southwest Florida, NCH Healthcare System was our sponsor for Blue Zones project. And typically, there's often 3, maybe 4 organizations together to sponsor. In Southwest Florida, it was kind of unique. We had a very enlightened leader of NCH Healthcare System and decided, you know what, I'd like to get out of the health repair and into the healthcare business. Let's quit fixing cars that are constantly wrecking themselves. Let's try to keep the wrecks from happening. So they participated as the sponsor, but they also participated as an employer. And I was involved in that project with them, partnership early on. They had a 3-point jump in their employee well-being, 54% drop in healthcare costs over 6 years. How many of you had a 50-some% drop in your healthcare anytime? 6 years, 1 year, a week, right? $27 million were saved. This is a huge impact for the employer. It's also a great benefit for the employees because they became an employer of choice. They had people tripping over each other to fill positions at NCH. It really helps with the hiring. Restaurants, I love this picture. This is Buffalo West, rib steaks, comfort food in Fort Worth, Texas. Imagine going to Cowtown and talking about vegetables. And we have, that goes on the side of the plate, that's fine. Well, at Buffalo West, their salad bar became 70% of their lunch business. The price per person increased, sales increases, all throughout the years. COVID probably hit them in a negative way as well, like it did in Southwest Florida. But again, giving more choice, it's fantastic for restaurants because the more choice you have, the more likely you're going to see more people coming into the restaurant as well. In Southwest Florida, I took all those pictures there on the left. That top right one is the $19 cauliflower steak at Shula's Steakhouse. It looks pretty appealing, right? The one on the left, that's the mushroom stack at CJ's on the Bay down on Marco Island. I keep pressing the wrong one. This is Noreen's Breakfast at Skillet's. And this one right here, the bottom right, that's Mel's Diner. They did it. And again, they had all the ingredients in the kitchen, just put them together. You don't have to have the meat with it. They had a few plant-based dishes. They had a lot of fun with it. And it brought them over $2 million in sales. That was 2021. Grocery stores, this was fun. This is Wynn's Market in Naples. They always sold sodas and energy drinks and juices and water, kind of equal portions, probably a little more on the display of sodas. Well, we talked to them about it and they said, yeah, let's increase our water percentage. So the water is a much larger than the other bits. Well, the beauty is they make more money on the water than they do on the Coke or the Pepsi. And which trucks do you think bring the water to them? Coke and Pepsi. So it's a win-win. It's good for everybody, and it didn't take the Coke or Pepsi away, but it just put this more prominent. So their water sales went through the roof. That's good for everybody. And they also created a Blue Zones checkout lane. Didn't have candy, didn't have anything, there that you wouldn't want the 5-year-old grabbing before you got home to eat. It was all healthy snacks, vegetables, nuts, et cetera. We actually saw mothers. This was kind of funny. I should have gotten a picture. But there was one day I went over to Wynn's. Our office was at the NCH campus very nearby. And I went over to Wynn's. There were 5 people on the line at the Blue Zones checkout lane. And 2 other registers had nobody waiting. And they're like, nope, I'm good here. I'm good here. It's like, wow, thanks, So kind of cool. This is Le Grand Caribbean Market out in Immokalee. The project work in Southwest Florida wasn't just with the folks in Naples. Southwest Florida is a very diverse community. And Immokalee is a tough part of the area. Very immigrant, high immigrant population, a lot of agriculture, a lot of serious healthcare needs, a lot of disparity. Le Grand Caribbean Market, when I first visited the family, met the folks, et cetera, that's their produce space. It was at the back of the store. It's 12 foot, and it's about as unappealing as you can imagine. Some of the produce was in pretty good shape. The roots were pretty good. The eggplants were good, but some things were kind of tough. And we started talking with them, and Frank LeGrand ran it for the family. And I said, Frank, I'd like to help increase your business, and I'd like to help the health of the family. Frank actually lost 100 pounds. He got really serious. His doctor told him, you need to change or you're going to be dead in a year. So Frank changed his lifestyle. He started exercising. He started eating better. And he realized what he did for himself, he wanted to do for the community as well. So he signed up. And instead of 12 foot of old, tired merchandising at the back of the store, we ended up with 30 foot of merchandising at the front of the store. And I'm proud to say Blue Zones Project paid for the merchandising that was needed. They were used fixtures, but it was a great investment in the market. It was a great investment in the community. They had like a 300% increase in produce sales. And it might not seem as significant when you realize, though, the folks in this community, the last thing they want to look at is a tomato or a bell pepper, because that's what they've been dealing with maybe all day. So trying to change some of those habits and get folks to embrace and come away from some of the comfort foods and think a little bit healthier. It was a lot of fun, very rewarding. Policy, Blue Zones Project works on food, tobacco, and built environment. In the food policy, one of the key things was identify the food deserts, find where it's difficult for people to access healthy food. If there's a 7-Eleven around the corner and there's, a Hormel chili and some nice thing, okay, great, you might have survival food, but do they have vegetables? Do they have the things that you really need for balanced nutrition? So we worked with we created this council, Southwest Florida Food Policy Council, got $1.2 million in grants, and we worked with this group called the Means Database, and this is a group that takes excess food. They have a really nice software system, so excess food that a restaurant or a catering business might have, that wedding buffet, you've got a little leftover, they send up a flag to let people know we've got, 5,000 pounds of turkey and 3,000 pounds of mashed potatoes. Somebody will touch base with them lickety-split and come and get that food and repurpose it for the Salvation Army, the shelter, whatever it is. Huge decrease, 310,000 pounds of food was rescued. This was a fun one as well. We did this at La Grande Caribbean Market with the Florida government, as well as University of Florida. We piloted a program for them called Fresh Access Bucks. And it essentially, if you came into the market and spent $10 on SNAP, your EBT food stamp, purchasing food, it gave you $10 on top of that to spend on produce from Florida. Sorry, California, your oranges didn't count. It was only produce from Florida. But again, it was fantastic. We also worked with farmers markets to get SNAP accepted, did free nutrition and cooking classes. The tobacco, I think this is pretty easy, and I think society has changed a lot now. I think we know that smoking's probably not too good for you. And, but in the state of Florida, you can't have no smoking signs out, so you just have to have these requests, the second suggestions. And again, I like that approach. Don't want to nag, you want to nudge. I've seen some that say healthy lungs at play. That's terrific. This gentleman here, this is somebody that I think some folks in the room might, is Mike here? Mike Pritchard? Mike, do you recognize that face at all? No, okay, see if you get the name. So Dan Buettner is Mr. Blue Zones. This is Dan Burden. Dan Burden is considered the world's expert on walkability and bikeability. Time magazine named him as one of the 6 top civic innovators alive in the world today. Dan does a lot with communities, over 4,000 communities he's worked with all around the world to help them reassess how the downtown flow is, not just for cars, but for people, for bikes, for property value. Dan Burden was actually behind the first roundabout ever to be put into Pennsylvania. This is in Unionville in Chester County back in 2005. And people think, oh, those are crazy things. Well, it reduces the severity of accidents and it saves people a lot of money. Dan did this in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. This was their downtown street back when he first saw it. And the city wanted to do it. I apologize for the pictures, but it's old film. But you notice how they had some back-end parking. They changed it considerably. The same amount of traffic flows, but it's better for pedestrians. They've got bike lanes now, etc. This is Central Avenue down in Naples. You've heard that it rains a fair bit in Florida, right? So this is one summer afternoon. Drainage was an issue. They knew they needed to do something to help that. This is Dan's idea, working with the city of Naples. This is what Central Avenue became. And if you go across 41, we're a little way south of Mel's Diner in Naples, right downtown near the NCH Hospital, you see 8th Street. This is Central Avenue here, and the large buildings up on the back left, that's actually the NCH Hospital campus. So not only was Central Avenue transformed, but so was 8th Street. Again, this is Blue Zone's project at work with the community, not coming in saying you have to do this, but helping the community reimagine. It's great for property value, great for businesses, and great for everybody's health and well-being, being able to get out and walk. So Fort Worth, Cowtown, I love this. Fort Worth, they improved their health ranking. Out of 360, I think it was that year, 353 communities in the United States, they were 185th, they went up to 58th. So from 185 to 58, that's a pretty significant increase, 31% drop in smoking, cholesterol down, blood pressure down, increase in exercise. The Safe Routes to School, they got $6.2 million in grants. I love this. I'll read this for the group here. This is from Betsy Price. She was the mayor of Fort Worth throughout the Blue Zones project, and she's still just a phone call away to give communities ideas and to share her own personal experience in Cowtown. Betsy Price said, "This is about making Fort Worth a better place. It's a great tool for us in the city. It's good for the neighborhoods. It's a good crime fighter. People that are out and engaged and active, their neighborhoods are safer. They're more engaged in the city. Children who are healthy learn better. And selfishly for us, It's a great economic development tool. It's a win-win. Southwest Florida, we were pretty proud to be ranked the healthiest community in the nation one year, and that was awesome. You know, I was calling family, yeah, we're #1. We got it the next year. Wow, that's pretty cool. We got it the next year, 3rd year in a row. 4th year, the family wouldn't even take the call. They weren't listening, you brag too much. And to be honest, what happened? We changed the measurement because we thought, you know what, it's great that we're doing it, but let's make it a little bit more difficult because you can't get better if you just keep doing the same thing. You got to be better in order to be different. I learned that from Dr. Bose. To be better, you have to be different. So we did change the criteria and made it even more stringent. Southwest Florida, this was the team that I worked with. $15.3 million we achieved in grant funding, and there was $190 million in healthcare and workforce savings because of increased employee productivity. If you're not sick, if you're at work, and if you're at work and happier and enjoying the work and enjoying your colleagues more, it's fantastic. 9,859 media mentions. The marketing folks track all this, $18 billion reach, huge value achieved. And I'm proudest of this, 835 organizations and 275,000 people were directly connected with the project. It takes one person at a time, but you keep adding up all those ones and it's a huge number. Another quote here, this is from Dwayne Hopkins. He was mayor in East Hawaii. Again, I said Hawaii is a 10-year project. The resources and expertise of Blue Zones project has motivated our community to put more positive changes in place in 1 year than we ever could have imagined. These are the kinds of policies and changes that won't be lost or reversed over time, but will continue to impact lives in this community for many, many years. So currently, and it's a tough number to come up with here because new projects are popping up from time to time, but currently more than 5 million lives in the United States have been impacted. There are currently 75 communities across North America actively involved. Albert Lea is still doing it. They never stopped, they're still doing it. And roughly 5,000 participating organizations. So you see these two southern retirement communities, Southwest Florida on the left, where I came from, about 2,000 square miles. We had in the project area 412,700 people. Few more people here in York County, but we're less than half the size, 911 square miles, and York County, the last stats that I could pull up, 456,000 people. So there's quite a similarity between the two. And I think it's very exciting that you are in this room and we're talking about what could be. I think we all recognize the cost of doing nothing, and there is a cost of doing something, but if you know that it's going to lead to measurable and sustainable results, that's a win-win for everybody. So this is kind of scary, but I took the map of York County and working with Matthew and Mayor Whitman and the team, started thinking like, how would we possibly divvy this up? And this was just for my Blue Zones colleagues, because you can't do it every door. They're not going to knock on every front door. You can't bother people, but you got to think of some geographic areas. So this was just kind of our first start thinking about in Hanover first, because Mayor Whitman's leadership, got to do it. And you also want to start where it makes sense to start. In Florida, we started in Naples. Immokalee might have had the greater need, but if you're a brand new doctor and the first patient you see has massive coronary heart failure or a really bad cold, which one do you think's better to start with? Right, the cold. And of course, unless you're a heart surgeon, in which case you kick them out of the office. But the point being, start where it's familiar, start where you can learn what you don't know, start where you can refine the process. So again, Hanover, I think, would make very good sense. And then we came up with South Central, Southeast, Mid-County, kind of near where I live, Windsor Township, et cetera, Metro York, Northwest, and the river towns. It's a beautiful county. There's a lot of diversity, and there are so many fantastic organizations already doing great good for the community. Our idea is to bring everybody together and make that participation a little bit more effective and reach every single person, not just the person that one organization might be targeting, the mother, the children, et cetera. We want to hit the whole family. We want to be able to reach everybody in the community and share that message. So the next steps we'd ask, please learn more, serve on one of our committees. We'll start forming committees, commit your staff or resources to help the project. And obviously the most important thing, provide or help secure funding. The first step would be an assessment. And then the assessment would tell us what would be the most sensible way to approach the project. My guess would be it'd probably be like a 7-8 year project maybe for York County to do it smart and in phases. So at this time, I have the great pleasure of introducing a friend, a mentor. I feel really fortunate to be in this position. I'm a regular guy. I've worked hard all my life. My kids like me pretty well. I've got a few good friends. I'm over the one and a half. I've got a few good friends, but it's rare to find yourself suddenly in later stages in life with something that just is so exciting that you feel so strongly about. Who would have thought that Blue Zones Project would pop into my life again when I moved 2,000 miles away? So at this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Alan Weiss. He's the Chief Medical Officer for the National Blue Zones Project. Having practiced rheumatology, internal medicine, and geriatrics for 23 years, and serving 18 years as President and CEO of NCH Healthcare System, our sponsor, a 716-bed, 2-hospital integrated system, Dr. Weiss now has a national scope focused on prevention. After graduating from Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons and subsequently completing his training at both the New York Presbyterian Hospital and Hospital for Special Surgery of Cornell University, he had a solo practice in rheumatology, internal medicine, and geriatrics for 23 years. He is recognized both as a Fellow of the American College of Physicians and a Fellow of the American College of Rheumatology. Dr. Weiss's national commitments and honors include being named as one of the top 100 outstanding physician leaders of healthcare systems by Becker's Hospital Review multiple times, chosen as a keynote speaker at numerous meetings. He served 5 years on the Regional Advisory Council of the American Hospital Association, elected to the American Hospital Association Board in 2017, chairman of the Upper Midwest Vizient Board, and continues as director of American Momentum Bank. In 2005, Dr. Weiss was invited to testify on information technology before the U.S. House Ways and Means Health subsection. For the state of Florida, he is past chair of the Florida Hospital Association as well as its quality committee. The Florida Hospital Association presented Dr. Weiss with its highest award in 2019 for advancing healthcare, and he has received numerous other awards from Florida organizations. His wife, Dr. Marla Weiss, is a writer and educator. They have 2 daughters who are also physicians. It runs in the family. One is a biomedical illustrator, educator, and the other an adolescent medicine physician and educator. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my dear friend. We're stuck together. You're not getting rid of me. Dr. Alan Weiss.
Should we all stand for 1 second, just take a break? We do something healthy. So if I was really talented, and I'm not, I'd give us like a little exercise thing to do just to move around, but everybody just stand and enjoy. So before I formally get started, I heard one of the questions was how, on that 54% savings for the healthcare system, how many people were insured? It's 6,000, 4,000 employees and 2,000 spouses and kids. So it's a big number audited. All right, so I think Jack Benny said you always have to know what act to follow, and David is a hard act to follow. When we were all together in Southwest Florida, we used to bring in new Blue Zones communities, some of those 75 communities, and he would do the speech on what it meant, very similar to what we just heard. So it's even gotten better. Why don't we sit down for a couple minutes, and I'm going to just spend a little time. First, I'm going to sort of 3 ways of thinking about Blue Zones, at least in my mind. First, as a physician. As was mentioned, I practiced for 23 years. And during that time, the same patients came back with the same illnesses all the time: diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiac disease. We were in the repair shop business. Now, granted, it sent 2 kids to medical school, but really that wasn't what we went to medical school for. We wanted to keep people well and prevent illness rather than having them come back recurrently. And it does work. Prevention does work really well. So that's the first way of doing it. And I didn't quite know how to do that when I was a practicing physician. I did the regular stuff, prescribed medicine, gave people some counseling when I was with them, and tried to develop a rapport. Sadly, it just never quite took. Then got involved with hospital administration for 18 years actually. And that was a very interesting phenomena in that there's a financial need for healthcare systems to do well, but there's also that need to take care of people. And I had a board that I worked for, about 14 folks, and I asked them, who wants to spend the night in the hospital? And we had a nice hospital. We've got wonderful hospitals here. You've got two big systems actually are here in the audience right now. They do great work. Drove by one of the campuses just now coming here. But I asked these folks, and they were proud of the hospital and the board, who wants to spend the night? Well, let me just, who here wants to spend the night in the hospital? How about, well, if we throw in a colonoscopy? Is that for free? No. And instead of giving a door prize, they said, how about your neighbors? Think your neighbors want to spend the night in the hospital? No, nobody does. I get it, and I agree with that. So really it came down to the fact that we have to figure out what to do to keep people out of the hospital. We were good at total joint replacements. We were 5-star, we're at the highest level for open heart surgery. We did all the right things and we, with CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, we were 5-star. We had the highest bond rating ever. We were a good system, 716 beds, 2 hospitals, as you heard. We did good things, but there was something wrong with that. Went out and did some shopping. Actually, what stimulated me to do this is, I mentioned we had 6,000 folks we insured, so we had 3 nurses come down with breast cancer. And it's 1 out of 8. But the difference with these 3 nurses was that they were not getting mammograms, and they were at the age when it was past the controversy, whether it's 40 or 50, they should have been getting mammography. And they weren't getting it. I was appalled. I was in private practice. I did prevention, as I mentioned, tried to do prevention. We weren't doing it. Very tragically, 1 dies, 2 survive. At that point, we said, this is crazy. We're not even taking care of our own folks. Went out and started doing some shopping about 2013 to 2014. Met with Dan Buettner and got involved with the Blue Zone, shopped it carefully, and brought it to Southwest Florida as the sole sponsor. It was a big deal. It was a career-limiting move for me if it didn't work. I had a couple of those times, but it was worth the risk at that point. In my career, because we were just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Got into it in 2015. Third-party independent reviewer of the University of Wisconsin populations group. It's a population. They look at birth certificates and death certificates. Nowadays, after 100 years, birth certificates and death certificates are very accurate. So between 2015 and 2020. We added 0.6 of a year of life expectancy for 400,000 people across the socioeconomic spectrum. So you go out to Immokalee, which is a resource-challenged community. You go down to the coastal Collier County, which is an affluent community. Everybody in between, on average, up 0.6 of a year. The rest of the nation during that time, 2015, 2020, was going down with diseases of despair, suicide, alcoholism, and drug addiction. Now, it's a question whether gun violence is going to make it into the 4th disease of despair. But everybody else is going down. We went up 0.6 of a year. Now, is it a perfect experiment? We bought in blue zones. We went up, maybe not perfect, but something was happening that was different than the rest of the country. We jumped from 73rd in the nation to 1st in the nation, as you heard. Of the 67 counties, it's interesting, Pennsylvania has 67 counties, as does Florida. Of the 67 counties, we jumped to 1st for 4 out of the last 7 years or so. St. John's, which is just south of Jacksonville, keeps flirting with 1 and 2 and us. So we're going to start putting more cigarette ads up there. We're not going to do that. But, you get the picture. And it doesn't matter, one or two is bragging rights, being able to call your relatives. But the whole point is we're trying to bring the whole state up. And just as having a foothold here in Pennsylvania would be spectacular. So the first thing I said was, as a physician and the nurses. Second thing, as a hospital administrator, trying to keep people out of the hospital. The other thing for the hospital administrators here, and I'm not going to, don't answer this question, but as you get to be Medicare age, you have a choice. You can get into Medicare Advantage or traditional Medicare. Medicaid, there's managed Medicaid, and there's people who self-pay. They really don't have insurance. But those populations are economically an advantage for a healthcare system if those people are healthy. So out in Monterey, California, which is a Blue Zones community, two competing hospitals, good hospitals, Salinas Valley and Montage, got together, and normally they compete for who can do more open heart surgery, who can do more hip replacements, who can take care of more pneumonia and congestive heart failure, all the regular stuff. They compete on market share because they want to keep their beds busy. Nothing's worse than an empty bed in a hospital in terms of financially. But what happened there is they said, you know what, we've got all these patients who we get paid a certain amount of money per month to take care of. And if they don't come to the hospital for a heart attack, we make more money. Exactly. So they got together and the whole county got better. And interesting enough, they had close to a 70% incidence of diabetes in that county. Very heavily Hispanic community and obese community. Their weights went down, their diabetes went down, the Medicare Advantage became more profitable. Everybody was healthy. They're doing the right things. You don't have to cut off limbs with diabetic complications. You don't have all the eye problems and so on. So it makes a real advantage in terms of administration. The other number that was mentioned by David, and thank you for doing that, is that 54%. The city of Naples employees, about 500, and you saw Mayor Bill Barnett, they went down about 50%. The county went down about 50%, and they're a big employer. They're almost as big as they're the third largest, the school system in the area. And I suspect here, healthcare or the school system or the both. But you've got big industry here. You got all the food, so those, but they're probably not as big as the healthcare systems or the school system in terms of number of employees. But those folks, those employers, they spend a lot of money on taking care of their own employees. One of the big healthcare systems has over 20,000 employees here. If you talk to the people who run their finances, and they can save money on their own employees and also be a great community citizen, the Chamber of Commerce loves it, the tourism goes up, becomes a very desirable area and becomes really an icon for the state of Pennsylvania, which would be very, very interesting. So that's from the point of view of being sort of the economics of it, in addition to being the altruistic point of view. It works. David, we just added Jacksonville, Florida, a big city, almost as big as Fort Worth. And I think we're up to almost 80 communities now, about 5+ million folks. So we're growing. And as I drove in today, and I obviously did some homework on the internet in the last couple of days about what's going on here, you're an ideal place to have a start on this. You did one of the two hard things so far. You already have a committee going of people who know people to network. You've got an audience here that can make it happen. That's the first thing. Second thing is you've got to get to your large employers and tell them the advantage, because literally they've got to make their profit. It's just it's what they do. But if they can have their own employees not only cost less, but be more engaged and satisfied and easier to recruit and easier to retain, which is also what happens. You become the employer of choice. And people, as was said, people hang around with other people who are like themselves. So the example was the negative one. If you're hanging around with smokers and overweight people and drinkers, that's what you do. But you hang around with people who are engaged in the work, want to do the right thing, and walk a few times a week, and are socializing, then it's a whole different attitude about going to work and feeling good about what's happening. what typically happens, and I've already seen it just hanging out in the back of the room and talking with some folks, is that people have their own little areas. And you'll get there. You'll be able to do everything that you saw in the Blue Zones, all those projects. It'll take you about a decade. If you look back, the hospitals are required to do a survey, basically of where they are every 3 years, the Community Health Needs Assessment. And if you look back at the assessments that are done, and the one that was done here locally, I looked at it, it was excellent, outstanding. But if you look at it from 3 years ago, it hasn't changed. If you look at it from 6 years ago, it hasn't changed. And that's the typical story. And that's where we were also back in Southwest Florida until we got something that worked, basically an organized program with over 250 policies and procedures and recommendations and best practices that allow you to get together. So number one, get with your employers who are self-insured. Number two, keep this motivation and enthusiasm you have right now, so we're not meeting again 2 years from now and saying, geez, we could have had a V8. You don't want that to happen. You don't want to miss the boat. You want to get started. The other thing that typically happens is that we've got to do everybody all the time. David beautifully said, pick a pilot area that's going to work. In 1 year, you get nice metrics. In the beginning, when you do the assessment, we get terrific metrics. Metrics are no problem, but just looking at the numbers doesn't change them. But we get terrific metrics, and then 1 year later, you do the same types of metrics, and you see a nice change. In 2 years, it's a dramatic change. You almost don't believe it. And then it spreads out to the other communities in the county, and that's how it best works. So I think we've got time for Q&A. And everything's
I have a slide for that. There we go.
very, very creative.
So questions, please.
First question is the hardest to ask. And I'll ask the tough one. So what are the possibilities of getting things going here, David?
So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being definite, honestly, show of hands, how many would say we're at 10? Couple? How many would say we're at 9? Few? How many would say we're at 8? How many would say we're at 7? That's kind of, I'm thinking 7, a little bit. 6? Yeah, kind of maybe. Yeah, that's interesting. It's good questions. Bill.
What role in the other projects have political leaders played? And I'm specifically thinking about our county commissioners, who probably are the most powerful politicians in York County. Have you seen similar people do things that make a difference?
Let me answer this because I don't live here. Yeah, I will. So how about political leaders, particularly the county commissioners? So the county commissioners, in my experience, want to do the right thing, but they want to also get reelected. So if there's a popular movement to do the right thing, they'll go along with it. Now, occasionally you get someone who's got a different point of view, but in general, they will go along with it. In terms of funding from the county, they don't have, typically counties, and this could be an exception, they don't have the money in the budget to do anything. They can be very good supporters, but the people who are holding the purse strings are the large employers. Good question. Thanks for bringing that up and getting it on the table right up front. But the good thing you got a mayor here who's dynamite. I mean, she is worth her weight in gold.
And that is one thing I would share too. I think really the magic of the project, as we saw it come to life in Southwest Florida, was the we aspect. Early on in the project, folks thought it was government. Nope. They thought, it was like Uncle Sam providing everything for free. Nope. When they realized that employers were investing in their employees and their community, think about that. That's pretty good. You're not messing with my tax dollars. You're not crossing a line somewhere. You're actually doing the right thing for your employees, which also benefits the community. And the other thing I would stress as well, what I saw so magical in Blue Zone's project, this isn't a solution for everything, but I would say it is a great unifier for everything. There are so many amazing organizations already at work in this community, and everybody doing phenomenal work. But Blue Zone's project ends up becoming kind of like a force multiplier. That's my old military days coming out. It adds lift and momentum to the things that are already happening and gets people that are not the subjects of that organization's good work involved in ways with the organization, understanding, supporting, volunteering, etc. If you're doing something good and other people start to emulate, everybody has their own version of it. So, other questions?
Please.
You say you have these steering committees and these policies. Do you have a policy, say, for a hospital as to what they do, so you step by step do it? How about a restaurant? I mean, you said how you go into a store, but how do you go to a restaurant? How do you go to a hospital and say?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Let me take Matt's tag off you.
Oh, thanks.
It's
Oh,
been
did
about-
you do that?
It's been bothering me the whole time.
So,
Anybody else bothered?
so just real quick, yes, so every one of the places, there's a like 40 to 60 page booklet of choices. And what's exciting is very often the organization is already doing some of those things, which makes it feel great. Hey, look, we've already got a head start. But there's other things maybe they hadn't considered, like working with an employer. It might be changes to the employee time off policy, giving them time to volunteer in the community. A lot of employers now are starting to shift where you need to take your vacation time this year. You can't roll it over. I met somebody that had 3 months worth of vacation saved up. That person was an absolute wreck. Not enjoying their life, not having fun, but they were saving that vacation for one day. It's kind of a funny thing because you feel like it's a negative, but it's actually a very positive thing for the employer to say, no, David, you need to stand down, you need to take some time off. You'll be better when you come back to work. Did you just hit him in the shoulder? Is that Jake? Does he need vacation? Okay, all right. But encouraging the volunteerism, lactation room, downshift room, walking trails for employees, encouraging carpooling, not for the carpooling, but for the relationship building. Actually, NCH, I was involved helping them start walking MOIs. These are nurses and physical therapists, et cetera, in a hospital that I had to go up to and say, I'd like to get you to walk more. And they looked at me and like, I'm doing 15 miles a day. What are you doing? But it wasn't the walking, it was the being together. So we started forming these walking MOIs. It was really cool seeing the nurses in uniform walking around the neighborhood. NCH downtown hospitals in a pretty nice neighborhood. And after about 2-3 weeks, you started seeing people coming out of their houses and joining the nurses on the walk. Now think about that as an employer who might not always be viewed favorably because some of your vehicles make very loud noises as they run to the emergency room, right? So here were people in the community connecting, building relationships with the staff at NCA. It brought tears to my eyes. So it's very magical. And again, each part of the community has, each of those sectors, if you will, has a booklet to follow.
Just a 1 second out on, you're already doing some nice things. When I came here today, one of the ladies welcoming us was wearing a sort of dress outfit, but with sneaks, intentionally to be able to walk down. I think she had her dress shoes nearby, but that's what happened in the executive suite. The folks we worked with, they would bring in sneaks basically and switch from dress outfit to sneaks, go out for a walk, come back, have a quick lunch, and everybody was happier.
Yeah. Other questions? So no one's asked, but when are we going to start the project? What do you think? So the goal, I mean, seriously, your participation, learning more, volunteering on the committee, connecting with us. You've got our cool email address, steeringteam@outlook.com. Who would have thought that was available? Please connect with us. There's no bad question. There's no dumb idea. It's all one step at a time, but getting to the right employers, foundations, but as Dr. Weiss said, I think definitely employers would be so impacted. It's so helpful and beneficial for them, and that includes healthcare systems. Wherever you have a lot of employees, there's a great benefit in participating with the project. So it starts with that one step.
So even with our own employees, so we got into everybody feeling good about themselves, and basically our recycling poundage went up. I forget the exact numbers, but people started doing the right things. They were nice to each other in the elevators and nicer to the patients. It was just patient stat went up. We were a 5-star with Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That was a big role. That was a big change. We had been 4-star for like ever, and then popped up. And that was it the only thing that happened? No, but I think that had some big influence on it.
Yes,
Did you find an increase in people attending religious services? So I see that at
Yeah, that's a good
in
one.
your
restate
life,
that?
and I'm
Yeah.
curious.
So did we find a change in people attending religious services? We featured in Southwest Florida, first of all, it's any religion. And we had a lot of religious leaders across the board, very ecumenically, embrace this. Now, whether their actual numbers went up or not, I don't know. Across the nation right now, the number of people going to formal worship services, all religions, is coming down, and that's a concern. I think it had held the line or maybe improved. And I don't know the exact numbers, but that is a great question. And I'm not quite sure how to research that, but I'll see what we can do in terms of our national. Thanks for that one. Please.
Was there any measure of carbon footprint impact as you
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
changes? That, especially with the intersection.
Yeah. These are good questions. I'll give you an answer and then sort of an editorial. The answer is our recycle went up. I think we were a little more prudent. I don't know the water usage and the electric usage in town, but it's hard to pin down. Having said that, if you go to the Community Wellbeing Index, CWBI, which is a measure of where you can see how your county is doing, we can get down actually to the zip code, which has 600 parameters, including carbon footprint and everything else, premature delivery to amount of pollution, the number of sunny days, everything else. And that Community Wellbeing Index is combined with about 5 million folks who've taken the well-being, the real age test. The real age test compares your physiological age with your chronological age. So you take these 5 million folks with the 600 parameters, and you can really get a feel for what's happening, and that would be the way to measure it. And the other thing, when you go home, get on the internet and take the real age test yourself. My chronological age is 76. My physiological age is 69. So the older you get, you've got a bigger drop. If you're like 17 years old, you can't really change that much. But when I look around the audience here, we got some opportunity. So and it takes about 20 minutes. It's confidential. It's very motivating. And then they'll send you questions if you want, and if not, it's just between you but it's a good thing to do.
And can just add to this, so when I started with the project, I did help a little bit with schools and community and people and work sites and grocery stores and restaurants. As we grew, and there were more and more communities and more people, we went from a team of 4 to a team of 9. And I narrowed my focus predominantly to grocery stores and restaurants. And it was really interesting. It was on the board of the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association in Collier County. Hospitality, like healthcare, is a very difficult industry to find employees. Generally speaking, across the United States, there's cost of living, transportation, et cetera. No worse than Marco Island, the JW down on Marco Island. They were bringing employees down to Marco Island, which is at the very bottom left corner of Florida. They were coming from 3 counties away. So when you think about the carbon footprint and impact, forget about just the carbon footprint, it's just the sheer logistics of it, plain and simple. Well, we worked with Collier County Transportation, the folks that designed the bus routes, et cetera, and they actually laid on some additional transportation routes from a large parking area well to the north that people could meet and brought everybody down effectively. The city of Marco Island did a number of things like that. I think it's interesting if you reimagine how you're living and how you're doing things, there are ways to make an impact. And what's kind of nice, there's benefits over here and over here. Right down the middle, it's a matter of bringing people together. So you could say that there's a benefit for carbon footprint and less traffic on the road. I'm really excited about the 35 people on the bus or 25 people on the bus that are talking and connected. So it's a win-win-win. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm here representing with my co-facilitator for Dementia Friendly York and Adams County. I was very excited to hear early in the what Matthew said, that vascular dementia was discussed. I'm just curious if you guys have any comments at all about the prevalence of vascular dementia as well as Alzheimer's disease and any type of dementias that you have seen in any of these communities.
Yeah, it's a nationwide problem, dementia, from all causes. The healthier people are when they're young and growing up, you'll decrease your long-term dementia. It's a long lead time, but you got to start somewhere. So I think you just get people healthier. You get these kids exercising when they're in school, and they continue with that later in life, you've got a better chance of not having. And the other thing, the vascular dementia is primarily hypertension driven. So if you can control blood pressures by getting people healthier and getting the body mass index down, the BMI, so it all fits together.
Thank you for saying that.
Anyone else?
What do you do with the schools? How do you get the nutrition in the schools?
So, want me to talk to schools? Okay. So schools, I'm a pretty competitive person. I was a sales and marketing fellow all my life. I worked, I was a bug rep in England for 3 years. I've ridden Clydesdales bareback in Scotland. That was a lot of fun. So competitive. Bose Corporation, Costco Wholesale. So we had a meeting, Deb and Paula and Stacy and I, we were a team of 4, and we went in and met with Dr. Patton, Superintendent of Schools of Collier County. And Collier County has, am I correct, was it 82 schools?
Yeah, at about a little less than that, about 70. Collier County has 70 schools. 45% of the kids go home to a non-English speaking primary. 65% of the kids have free or reduced lunch menu. Gives you an idea about the county.
Okay, gotcha. So we had this meeting and we rolled out, again, there was a nice booklet of all the different well-being nudges that the school could use. And our goal was to get half the schools to participate. So let's say we had a number like 33, 34 that we were shooting for, or 37, say, that we were shooting for. And somebody had to ask the question. And we were talking all nice, and Dr. Patton and her team, everybody was, really serious. And I just finally said, so listen, do we have a yes or a no? We really want you on board. We want to get 37 schools approved. And Dr. Patton said, well, I'm going to have to say no. I'm just, oh, okay. She said, I can't do 37. I have to do them all. And I got goosebumps. Tears quite literally started coming to my eyes. And Dr. Patton said, it might take us a little more time, but I can't pick the kids that are going to be winners and the kids that are going to be losers. And we don't want the fancy Naples schools to be winning before the schools in less fortunate Immokalee, et cetera. I love that kind of leadership, visionary thinking, and they did it. And again, in the schools, very simple things. Now, you talk about nutrition in school. I would say that's the third rail in schools. It's very difficult because there are federal and state rules, school board rules, and never get the PTA angry with you. So again, but the Blue Zones project approach is to increase choice. Simple little things. I remember one of the nudges we learned in the school cafeteria. They served chocolate milk and whole milk. Which one do you think kids grab the most of? Chocolate milk. Well, I'm not saying chocolate milk is terrible for you, but it's got a lot more sugar, right? So they still have it in the school cafeteria. The chocolate milk is at the back. The white milk, the plain milk, is at the front. Well, if Tommy is talking to Elizabeth and he really thinks she's very special, he's not paying attention to what he's grabbing. He grabs the white milk and he sits down and makes a big deal of himself. It's that little nudge. He had to work a little bit harder to grab the chocolate milk. Same thing with the fruits and whatnot, So just trying to make the healthy choice easier, but never the only choice. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
To piggyback on her question with the school involvement, so what kind of age groups do you have involved in your work, in your committee work? Like you have the picture, the children working in the garden, but do you ever have kids at the table, the 9-year-olds, 12-year-olds, do they get to sit at the table and participate in these conversations?
Yes, so participate elementary school, middle school, high school, and again, with respect to the families and the communities, there's so many opportunities for events, backpack events with school supplies, physical activity events, purpose workshops. We actually had purpose workshops, but there we found for kids, but we found high school was probably best, middle school was maybe a little bit too much. But again, many different ways to engage. And what's exciting is that very often the ideas and the inspiration for different ways to engage, encourage some of the healthy connections and behaviors, they're there. They haven't had the opportunity. So creating a place a safe, positive space in the community where folks with those ideas, the teachers, the administrators, the parents, you let them flourish.
So two things. One school example is Friday night football games. You can still sell the hot dogs. You just also have, it's a PTO thing, fundraiser. It's a good fundraiser. But you have to add something else that's healthy, and you just make it easier to do. Same as the chocolate milk story. The other thing is, we have 80 communities now. They're very creative. They get together, so the school folks will all get together on meetings every other week or whatever, and they'll share best practices. So we got a book of what goes best in school. We got a book of what goes best for faith-based organizations. We've got the whole, that's where you save the 10-year learning curve. You can do it, but it just takes so long that you just get frustrated and basically doesn't happen. And that's where we are. That's the community health needs assessment that the healthcare systems do every 3 years, and they put it on the shelf. We did that too. I'm not being critical. I mean, that's what got me out of this whole thing. I'm tired of doing these reports that don't go anywhere. Let's do something. Even if it's wrong, just let's do something.
I'm curious about dental health and if you saw improvement in that area.
I don't know that I'd have to check the community well-being index. I'm sure it's in there as a, but that dental health is important for, obviously. And I don't know the answer to that. There's a question up here someplace. Oh, yes, thank you.
I was just curious, you brought up the community health needs assessment. I was curious about what the content of the Blue Project assessment is, and if there is any coordination so that there's not survey fatigue and all.
Yeah. So with the blue zones, basically depends on the community well-being index. We can get down. This is a detailed statistical answer, and I'll make it fast for everybody. But we can get down not so much to the zip code. We can get down to the metropolitan statistical area. When people here vote, so when you go to your voting poll place, you're in with about 2,000 to 6,000 people. We can drill down to that level with these 600 different parameters, and we'll oversample with the real age test. So we can get much more detailed, and we can get that detail and put it in the community health needs assessment. So basically, the community health needs assessment gets done with the numbers that we do when we first come in and do an assessment for a community. So it's a whole new level that's way more than you get out of Robert Wood Johnson, or you get out. I'm assuming you're in the population studies, but it's really detailed, and you can, and that might be able to answer the dental health question. I just don't know the answer myself. Love to. So there, we can share my email address, and I'll send this paper out to everybody. I write a weekly, which is basically, on the last one was the cost of obesity, suicide. I also write a national one, and one I wrote that got feedback was missing the boat. So why don't communities like this community do something? Number one, they're too busy, the tyranny of the present. We're so busy putting out fires, we don't have time to do fire prevention. So you go to your local fire system here and you ask how many active fires did they have this past year? And the answer is going to be a half a dozen, maybe. And the reason is they're so good at fire prevention. So the first thing is you get too busy to do it. Second reason that people or communities don't do it is because there's so much money that is being made by sickness and illness. Okay? It's a great industry. I made a living off of it. You got, we're all making a ton of money off the sickness. Not saying it's right or wrong, but that's you're breaking up a very profitable industry. The third reason is called learned helplessness. So you go in the community and they say, not only are we hopeless and helpless, but so were our parents and so were our grandparents, and we've always been this way, and it's not going to change. That's very sad. And the fourth reason that I see is the NIH syndrome. So NIH is National Institute of Health. That's what everybody thinks at first. But it's really not invented here. So we didn't invent it, so we're not going to do it. So, so you get these healthcare systems with big, billboards and TV advertising and sports advertising, we're spending all this money on market share. But if we didn't invent it, we're not going to do it. So those are the 4 big reasons, and that's missing the boat.
And what I'd add, what I thought was exciting in Southwest Florida was seeing healthcare systems take what they were doing. You're always going to have car wrecks. You're always going to have heart attacks. You're going to have those normal things that happen. You need the hospitals. You need the operating rooms, et cetera. But where it gets magical is when healthcare systems see the opportunity for a different way to connect with and serve the community. And like Dr. Weiss said, there's actually more money in healthy people of a given age. But also NCH opened up a few different fitness centers. And I remember early on, right after they opened, you could go in there and shoot a cannon and you wouldn't hit anybody. There was nobody there. And before too long, those places were really utilized by the population. And it wasn't just the physical activity in there that folks were enjoying. It was also the coming together.
Yes.
And one of the centers in North Naples off of Immokalee Road, there were 2 Blue Zones project approved restaurants in the center as well. So, you know, these folks could go do all the fun stuff. They could eat something, they could have that cheeseburger, or they could have something else. But the point was, you brought like-minded people together, and those folks were encouraging one another. That was a great, if you will, add-on business, I think, for NCH as well. That membership, the fitness centers were great.
Yeah, and we also supported the YMCA locally, and we also supported the other gyms. So we did not want to compete. We wanted to add to them. So I didn't check. You've got a YMCA in town? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the Weiss. I've worked out in Weiss all my life. I was in one road. I just came up here today, but earlier this week I was in the Y in my own community.
Any other questions?
So who thinks it's a bad idea? He wouldn't be here, obviously, but you know, and that 7 or 8 question, you know, that we started with out of 10, counting down, you got a real shot at it. Large employers are your next goal. That's where I would focus attention. You've got, so the other thing that happens is you get 20% of a population that's already into it. In a nice way, I call them the tree huggers. That's everybody here, no offense. But we're already want to be healthy, wouldn't be here if it wasn't that case. Then you got the 60% in the middle, and you'll start to convert those people once you get organized. They'll start to come on board. They see people out walking. They see a healthy restaurant. They'll start ordering differently. You'll get those people. 20% of the people, Darwin will take care of. Darwin never rests. But don't spend a lot of time and energy. Darwin will take care of that. And if you do, you don't have enough resources. But if you convert 80% or close to it, which is what happened in Southwest Florida, then you get the rise in healthy life expectancy. So, and you've got a real shot at it here. You really do.
Good. Well, I would like to say thank you all. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Dr. Weiss, for coming. It was about 3 weeks ago that I called you, and I think it was it was a late night call, and I said, there's going to be a lot of people here. I need help.
No.
And I so appreciate him giving his time to the community. Tomorrow we've got meetings with some folks in the community, and then he'll be departing tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah. So I'm essentially a volunteer also at this point in my careers, because I just think this is so important for the nation.